Hi everyone, Kirby Fan here, and as I'm sure you've heard, the bell has rung. Time to get out some pen and paper for another round of copyability spotlights. And look, I really thought about not making the most obvious joke in the world, but look, I am a starving YouTuber desperate for more recognition, so here's the notification bell. Ring it, please. I can't promise it'll make a bell Kirby sound, but it will notify you whenever I upload. Leaving a like and a comment also helps big time, by the way. Don't forget to vote on what you want the next spotlight to be. You can check out the playlist to see which abilities have already been covered. Voting for the next round ends October 2nd, 2021, so if you're watching this video after that date, or if you'd like to leave the winner up to everyone else or something, let me know what you think of Bell. Do you like it? Think it was better or worse than it wound up being? Feeling an unbelievable urge to ring the aforementioned notification bell? Let me know. For now, I'm gonna chime in and talk about Bell. Kirby's had his share of one-off abilities over the years, but I think that today's ability, Bell, is one of the more unique cases. It debuted in Triple Deluxe, of course, but as far as the main series goes, it hasn't come back since. Fortunately, it's avoided being a one-game wonder because it was in the expansion for one of the sub-games, Kirby Fighters Deluxe. And of course, years later, it would come back for Kirby Fighters 2, but the long gap in between Fighters Deluxe and Fighters 2 saw Bell appear in 0 games. Now, you don't have to be in many games to be excellent, just look at Jet, but does the same logic apply to Bell? Is this a ringer for success, or is this one toxic toxin? Let's find out. Bell is one of the earliest abilities that you can get, mixless, in Triple Deluxe, which I think is pretty cool. I bring up that fact because it's one of the most noteworthy things that I can think to say about Bell. It's a fun ability to use and all, but it offers remarkably little overall. Its attacks aren't fast, it isn't necessarily strong, it isn't mobile, it's not a great boss killer, there's not even some obscure random tech like with Return to Dreamland Needle or something. Ring Ding Dong, the rapid attack, it's cool, but beyond the first hit, the damage it deals is really not very good. A Ding Finale, where Kirby sends out a shockwave, or a Quick Finale, a charge move of all things. Again, they're cool, but far too slow to be consistently reliable. The Quick Finale is definitely the superior one here, since the landing slam deals an impressive 30 damage, and it doesn't require the use of Ring Ding Dong, but it's still way too slow to be meaningful in any significant way. Sting Ding, where Kirby spins and attacks with bells on each side. A Tinker Melody, where you hold down B in Kirby's attacks. The Bell's Guard, where Kirby hides in the bell and hurts enemies who touch him. These are not worth anything at all. Totally useless on all fronts. Bell isn't outclassed or anything. It just has so many moves that serve little to no function. Big Bell fans and the average astute viewer may notice that I haven't brought up Twin Tinker, Bell's dash attack, yet. For those who don't know, while dashing, Kirby spins and throws one bell in front of him, one behind him. While it's a stretch to call it great, this is the one perk that Bell has that it can legitimately call good. Remember the name Twin Tinker, because you'll be hearing it a lot for the rest of the video. Not only does this keep Kirby's momentum going, it doesn't increase it, but it specifically doesn't make it worse. The bells he throws also bounce off walls a few times. There's no limit to how many bells Kirby can throw, and although they aren't on screen for very long, the bells will, inevitably, hit something and deal good damage. Unfortunately, due to the rest of Bell's kit and Twin Tinker not making Kirby specifically move faster, Bell sees no use in the any percent run. As mentioned before, better options exist. The bells themselves don't have any special properties, and they're just normal bells, so there's no niche to really be had in a 100% run either. I can't even try to claim a niche for Kirby Fighters, since it and Beetle were bonuses given to players who own Triple Deluxe for Kirby Fighters Deluxe, therefore not being available in the OG. Aside from Twin Tinker being a legitimately good move, Bell, simply put, has absolutely nothing going for it in the main game. But what about the arena modes? Maybe it can be better in there? Well, it is better, but it just barely qualifies for good. I guess that's a victory for Bell in its own way. Anyway, the name of the game for the arenas is, of course, Twin Tinker. Most regular enemies only require a one-hit to kill, so it was kind of irrelevant, but if you can position your bell tosses right, you can hit some bosses with both bells. While one Twin Tinker bell itself does good damage, 2 hits actually do really good damage, more than anything else in Bell's kit. It's kind of on the rare side. No boss rooms have walls for the other bells to bounce off of. You can kind of position yourself in a way to where you can hit a boss with both bells, but you're not always going to be able to do this. Still, the situation pops up often enough for it to be relevant. The rest of Bell's kit manages to come together better than the main game. Some moves like Ring Ding are good positioning tools to get Kirby places faster, so we can use Twin Tinker sooner. A move like Quick Finale is much better when you can hit a boss with it after it spawns, and in the case of the mini-bosses, you can even use Bell's unique guard to get rid of them faster. The rest of Bell's moves don't really serve much purpose, but hey, half of Bell's kit working out is far better than one move. Because of all this, Bell can actually do pretty good against some bosses. Overall, it's pretty average. There are some fights it struggles with pretty hard, but the good and the bad manage to even each other out. If you want to be generous, one of the fights that it struggles with is Pyribbit, and you can probably count on one hand the abilities that don't make that fight annoying. It's kind of a stretch, but still. Bell's certainly not bad, maybe even kind of good, depending on how much you hate Pyribbit, but it's not the great send-off it would have wanted, given how underwhelming it is in the main game. With that said, we move on to Kirby Fighters Deluxe. Unlike Kirby Fighters 2, this game never really took off, and no online will do that to a fighting game. And while we have the Kirby Fighters 2 meta to help us out with this game after the fact, I think looking at Deluxe as a time capsule of sorts of what people thought were good and bad is the better way to go, at least for the multiplayer. It gives me a reason to talk about the game separately, and shocker, Bell wasn't seen as very good. Fortunately, it wasn't seen as bad, but very middle of the pack, similar to how it fared in TDX's arena modes. Bell's far from the easiest ability to use, so back in the KFTX days, not too much was known about it, aside from Twin Tinker being really good to throw out in neutral. Oh, and Bell's block being a combo breaker, excellent stuff. But here we are again. The rest of Bell's kit is seen as underwhelming, relying on 1 or 2 moves to leave a mark. This leaves it as very predictable, especially back when everyone thought that grabs and projectiles were the better form of offense. But that's just the multiplayer, right? Yeah, maybe Bell's other moves translate better to playing through the single player? Yeah, about that. Bell is actually the slowest ability for going through the single player. I don't think there's much to say that I didn't say before. Quick Finale can be good on stages like Alcandra, having a guard break is nice, but Twin Tinker is really its only standout move here. And it's a slow dash attack, which doesn't cut it in a game with abilities like Cutter, Hammer, Bomb, the works. On easy. See, Kirby Fighters Deluxe efficiency varies greatly depending on what difficulty you're playing. For example, while Hammer crushes easy, Whip is the fastest for normal. Different settings work for different levels of AI. Now, Bell doesn't become a speedrunning superstar on higher difficulties, and is stuck being close to the bottom, but ekes out a win over a few other abilities. Twin Tinker is that good of a move, folks. So, did things work any better for Bell in Kirby Fighters 2? Surely with a full community backing it up, Bell can finally shine? Well, continuing on the single-player trend for the single-handed mode, yes, it is better. It isn't fantastic on easy, but it beats out a number of other abilities and ends up with a very respectable time. And look, other moves! You're not going to a fight without seeing Twin Tinker still, but was that Sting Ding? Wow, first time we've ever seen that move today. And the higher up you go in the difficulties, the better things actually look. Now, the single-handed mode meta isn't obviously the most explored, and many abilities don't even have runs for very hard, or especially regular hard, but Bell's times are legit on all difficulties. Turns out Bell, an ability with a lot of moves that hit on multiple sides, does better in a game where you fight more opponents that have larger health bars on larger stages. How about that? That said, this doesn't carry over to the story mode, but its late unlock can be heavily attributed to that. Maybe. I doubt it would be very good compared to heavy hitters like Fighter and Hammer, but Bell can at least hide from its inferiority this time, and brag about its solid showing in the single-handed mode. That is the first major victory for Bell. But the victories are about to start piling up a lot faster when delving into competitive Kirby Fighters 2. When the game first came out, unsurprisingly, nobody thought Bell was really worth very much. Very slow, unorthodox, and unable to keep up with the more stellar abilities like Staff. Unlike Fighters Deluxe, though, this game has online, so tournaments were allowed to happen, and the world was shown that Bell was, in fact, pretty darn good. And that Staff is actually one of the worst abilities. It's really funny how that works. Anyway, we're lucky enough to have a tier list put together by the best of the best in Kirby Fighters 2, so we can actually see around where Bell places. And yeah, it's still great. A+ in this instance is the equivalent to a high tier, viable even in serious tournament play, and who would have thunk it, it finally achieved legitimate stardom when its moveset finally came together. Yeah, the days of Twin Tinker being its only move are gone. Although Twin Tinker is easily one of, if not the, best moves that Bell has to offer. Bell's got a lot of insane tech going for it. Buffering a guard before you land so you can roll or jump while you still have Bell block properties, using Tinker Melody to reduce the end lag on Ring Ding, a move that's already good for pressuring the opponent with its good range, and a quick finale shooting out a projectile to help deal with zoning opponents, angling the Bell throne behind you for Twin Tinker, using invincibility on Bell's guard to avoid grabs. Bell just has so much going into it that makes it strong. It isn't easy, but having so many moves to work with helps it deal with many different kinds of opponents. Of course, it isn't a ridiculously overpowered top tier or anything, so it does have its weaknesses. Twin Tinker, as ridiculous as it is, loses to crouch, period. When using it as a defensive tool, you need to keep that in mind. Despite Bell having invincibility on its block for 15 frames, that's still the only real counterplay it has against grabs at close range, since the rest of its kit is really slow. And yeah, it's still slow. How about that? It's so slow to the point where Ring Ding, the basic B button jab as a reminder, doesn't combo properly into Ring Ding Dong, the move that comes out when you press B after pressing B. And even if it does hit, it's very easy to get out of it beyond the second hit. Still, if the top players of the game vouch for it being in the high tier, and with all of the good things it's got going for it, you can't argue with the facts. The tier list was made back in April 2021, so there's a chance that things have changed, but from my understanding, the meta has slowed down since then, so Bell being as good as it is will probably stay for a while. And hey, if it doesn't, and it turns out its flaws are enough to make it the worst ability in the game, highly doubtful, just humor me here for a second, that won't take away from Bell's fantastic overall efficiency in Kirby Fighters 2. Easily the best that Bell has ever been. But how good overall was Bell? Kirby Fighters 2 hype is fun and all, but don't forget, Triple Deluxe and Fighters Deluxe still exist. In one game, its potential was potentially never discovered and had an average single-player showing at best, and in the other, it's legitimately better not to talk about it there. Not good at all. So how do you judge an ability like that? Really bad in one game, average in another, really good in the last one. It took me a while to come up with an answer. On the one hand, being a high tier in a fighting game with a solid single-player showing is impressive, not something most other abilities can claim. On the other hand, Triple Deluxe, a main series Kirby game, shows Bell at its worst, only being average in the arena modes and straight up useless in the single player. A big part of me wants to label Bell as below average. If you don't get used in a 100% speedrun of all things, there's something horribly wrong, but I think I'll settle on Bell being slightly better than okay. Its successes in Fighters 2 shouldn't be overlooked, and while it's truly bad in the main game for Triple Deluxe, it does settle for being average just about everywhere else. That took a lot longer for me to figure out than I expected it to. Woo! Alright, end of the video time. Thanks for watching, everyone, and don't forget to leave that comment voting for the next ability. Reminder, the voting ends October 2nd, 2021, so get those votes in while you can. Spotlights for abilities that don't appear in a lot of games are cool, because I get to really dive into them to extend the video time, so don't be afraid to pick an ability that hasn't shown up very often. Of course, there's nothing wrong with picking more history abilities. The fire burning spotlight was almost an hour, never forget. So vote away. With that, I will see you next time. Bye-bye.